What's up? Hello. Another video talking about Morcana because I don't seem to do much else with my life. So that's where I'm at. It's really cool. I love it. Yeah, this is a different sort of a build and a different approach to the Amber Steel. Of course, it's not leaning on the aggro. I think what most describing it as is Amber Steel hybrid because, as you can see, it's got very much a mixture of what Steel Song has, traditional Steel Song. You've got singers in there, and you've got loads of Rapunzel value with the Lawrences and the Ursula. You've got all those big songs, but you've still got the dock to refill. And you've still got all the aggressive elements that you have in Amber Steel Aggro. You're still using Lady with Piglet. You're still using Rhino to get an earlier Equester and start rumbling with the board. The way that I went with this was over the weekend. I saw a lot of decks that were doing quite well with this approach and this sort of build. And there's always something to that. So yeah, I went away and sort of made my own one. Tested it, played it at locals, and it did very well. Tried all different matchups, trying to see where the pointers are that it loses some value, because of course it's in TCGs when you have a deck that's not committing to being a control deck, aggro deck. It's not committing to being AS aggro, it's not committing to being traditional Steel Song. It's kind of hybrid in between, where the pointers are where it loses. So it does lose some points somewheres, but right now in this meta, the way the things have shaped out, I think it's a very strong pick. Especially for events. I still think my opinion is, though, if you're going to like a store champs or something like that, if you're want to play Amber Steel Aggro, play Vinny. I'm most likely going to play some as well because I just really like the deck and I really like playing Vinny. So I'm going to play that. But this right now has felt at certain levels of sort of competitive play a very good approach to playing Amber Steel. And the pointers are really the benefits of it is, and then we'll jump into the deck afterwards, but I'll just talk about all the benefits and why I think this is one of the strongest picks right now. So right now, Amber Steel Aggro rises straight to the top of the meta. The most important deck to be thinking about, to be playing, to be looking at is Amber Steel Aggro. It's kind of swarmed the masses, like everyone sort of wants to have a go at it. I've even seen like hardcore Ruby Sapphire items and Shark players and Ruby Amethyst players who just basically would never drop those decks because they're just through core and core. Those sort of players that play those Amethyst and Ruby type decks have been playing Amber Steel Aggro. So what that does is everyone has to look at it, think, how can my deck beat it? How can I play into that? So there's just been a ton of real good like counters and techs and like so like even Ruby Sapphire Shark has just put like 4 copies of Super Goof back in. Amethyst Steel Dock has come back in a very strong form because it always had a very good matchup into Amber Steel Diggy Hole back in the day, back in set 6. So if we look back at the set 6 meta, it was kind of like Diggy Hole rose right to the top, and then all the other decks tried to counter or beat it. And to be honest with you, even with the Emeralds Amethyst decks, when they've just gone like 4 kits and just tons of bouncing, tons of ways to, tons of crab traps as well, where they can just litter the board of 1-drops and buff them with the crab. There's tons of people are just reacting and trying to beat Amber Steel Aggro. So that doesn't mean the deck's bad in any sense. It's still the best deck to play. It's still insanely powerful. And I think, in loads of environments, like I say, store champs, you could take it and do very well. I think even at a bigger event, because I'm still thinking about Axion, you could take it there and it'd do very well. Its power level is very high. But, that does mean that all these things that I just mentioned, people putting the text and the answers in, they do kind of want to hunt you down and take you out. And if you're not playing Amber Steel Aggro at the most optimal level, or you're just going to like have a bad variance day and just have bad curve, bad hands, you're not seeing the cards you want, on top of that your opponent's playing cards that are built and put into the list to beat you, you're gonna have a bad time. So the reaction to that was, of course, these decks. I'm mainly going to mention Amethyst Steel again, being so strong, and I couldn't really get the Vinny build to work very well into Amethyst Steel. They could, rumble with your board quite early on, keep it quite low, use Foxes and Genies to sort of control you. And Genie could even be their like race card if they needed to get ahead. They would play. They've got 4 Elsas of the 5-cost Elsa that exerts it. They could exert Vinny. If not, they could find strength and get rid of it. And in the resource war of those like stalemates that you find yourself in, you would just end up losing quite a lot of the time because they would most of their cards say draw a card on them. All their 1-drops do. Genie does. They also still play the dock. They could bounce the dock. So when you got into a stalemate, it was very, very rough to win those. And even versus Amber Steel Aggro into traditional Steel Song, it was very rough as well. You'd both be doing your own thing. The only thing you could really try and do is create so many threats that they couldn't answer them in time. You know, they can only strength and Zeus so many things that you were just going to go wide enough to aggro them out. Still a strong game plan, still very winnable. But I felt eventually Amber Steel Aggro was feeling a little bit unfavored into a lot of these matchups. So I particularly was losing a bit of faith in playing it and wanted to play something else. So I saw online like loads of people have been playing these more hybrid based versions. And I built my own one and I've been testing it and it's great. And I think it can rumble with the best. It can rumble with Amethyst Steel. Your traditional Steel Song matchup, like win percentage goes way up. I think you're a lot better into that matchup. You do lose some pointers as well and some other things. But before I undersell the deck and why it's not why its weaknesses are, I'll mention its strengths. So yeah, so there's original matchups if you were bringing like Amber Steel Aggro, the Vinny version. Your weaker matchups was traditional Steel Song, Amethyst Steel. You know, traditional Steel Song could get on top of you with singing. If they played a Troubadour and Ursula on turn 2, you sometimes just lost that game. They could Zeus or your Rhino, Zeus your Vinny, go wider, sing strength, and take you out. Amethyst Steel could manage Pete's, you know, get the Foxes to get great value, Elsa exert and take things out, go wider than you, and win on resources. But with this build, we'll go into the traditional Steel Song matchup first. It just feels way more one-sided on your side. You do a lot of the things that they do, and originally in like traditional Steel Song, when both players play, they build up these boards and they sort of trade strengths, trade Zeus, trade Let the Storms. You know, maybe get some value of Rapunzel if they're lucky. And then there's a bit of a stalemate where one of you is going to have to play Whole New World because that's your main draw mechanic. If there's no Rapunzel value, that's definitely what you're going to be having to do. And I guess in this standoff where you just basically top deck and whoever plays the biggest characters is able to turn sideways better, or, you know, play enough big characters to wheel and then sing a bunch of removal wins. So in that matchup, the difference there with this build is you're both in that stalemate. You're both trading songs. You've got offensive songs wise, you know, you've got the full strengths, you've got the 3 Zeuses. You can even play 4 Zeuses, fall at the storm, so you can do those things. But when it gets into that stalemate, you're able to just play a dock and just get 2 cards instead of it being, you know, back and forth top deck who gets to play the biggest thing. You can just keep going wider a little bit more, and even on the draw, it's felt very fine. You know, you can get your Ursula down on 2 and, you know, sing a Zeus or whatever on their Rhino or their Aerial, and again, you don't really need that many powerful singers. You don't need 5-cost singers at all set up in the deck, so they've got limited targets. They'll probably target your Rhino and stuff like that, same way that you'll target theirs, and you can just get a board a bit wider. You can play Aerial in the deck as well. I will just mention that I did change it. I posted this list on Twitter, and originally it did have 2 Aerials in, I believe, but in this version I've gone to 2 Sven. Aerial is kind of an interesting card in the deck because you don't need her 90% of the time. She'll just be ink. And then sometimes you have these moments like where I just need a song to break the stalemate. Maybe you've gone Cindy, Ursula, and you just need to find a song. So you play the Aerial, find the song, sing it, remove something, and then your board tempo, you should be way up on that. Besides that, she doesn't do much else, so I cut her and put Sven in because Sven has the ability to, you know, later in the game, some matchup you can quest with a Piglet, restand it and say you need Elsa, you need Kit, you need an answer for this that isn't challenging into it, and you get some more life out of the character. So yeah, in traditional Steel Song, it's just been very much a powerhouse. Because you just get to use Dock Draw instead of using Whole New World, and if they ever Whole New World you get the benefit from it. You know, the only things that really can screw you up is Sonic Warrior, the Aerial, but you know, you can still use your Pete's, you can still play along Came Zeus and get rid of it, play some strength. You can still find answers for it as well, so that's completely fine. And of course in the stalemate, if you're both going down to very weaker characters, you could be top decking Piglets and big questers, Svens and stuff like that to keep a board pressure and keep lore pressure on as well. So into traditional Steel Song, it's felt really strong. Into Amethyst Steel, again, it's like, what do they do when you play a Troubadour turn 2, or not Troubadour, sorry, Ursula in this sense. The reason why we play the Ursula over the Troubadour is Ursula just can give you more Rapunzel value if at any point you need to run her in, take 3 damage by hitting a Smee or a Pete or something, and you can Rapunzel heal her and draw 3 cards and get more value of that, which you can't really do that much of Troubadour. He will only take 2 damage at max, otherwise he'll be removed from the board, he'll be banished. So Ursula just feels a bit more of a fit in this list, but I think the differences between those 2 cards are very nuanced and very different. There is some times where I prefer it to have been a Troubadour, but overall it's just felt like giving you more Rapunzel traps is just better, so I've gone with Ursula. But even into Amber Steel, yeah, if they're going to go one drop and play a Calhoun or a Smee, you can just delete that with a Zeus. Of course, if you've managed to go Cindy, Ursula, and you've been singing Let the Storm, sing Zeus, they have no chance to even play something in Fox Bounce and hit and take it out and get a good trade. And then you can just go wide. You can dock spam because this build as well, we're playing 4x Rapunzel. You can set up constant Rapunzel traps. So whenever they turn anything sideways, it's not evasive. You can just run it in and get your card draw that way. Run it in, take the damage, and then heal it for the card draw. So that's awesome as well. As well, like in the Vinny style list, I don't think Rapunzel's that great. We're not really expecting our in the Amber Steel Aggro Vinny list, I don't think we're expecting our characters to live for that long. And sometimes when they're removed, we get bonuses, like if Vinny was on the board. So keeping things alive is not that great. It's more about just pushing great amounts of lore. But here we have a bit more, a bit more last on the board. We want our things to last a bit longer and survive. So Rapunzel's great. And if we're really going to this deck saying we just want to be really good at rumbling, and rumbling or is like the slang nickname term for like fighting board presence and like battling each other. Rapunzel's always been quite the queen at that because she gives you the ability to heal things up. I'll have opponents as well where it's very clearly they should just quest their characters out, but they won't do it because you could get massive Rapunzel value out of it if possible. Always going. You can even do some very simple, strong curve lines where you just play a Daisy turn 1 or a Cindy turn 1, play a 2-drop. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Play your 1-drop, play your 2-drop, play Lawrence, and then if they don't deal with the Lawrence and they've got a 2 or 3, like possibly a Smee on board, if they quest of it, you hit it, Rapunzel heal and get 3 cards, which has always been the thing that traditional Steel Song's been able to do, and you can do that here as well. So yeah, just really great at rumbling and battling in those smaller battles. And that's what it's kind of aiming to do, is just to counter the counter picks for traditional Amber Steel, traditional Amber Steel Aggro. That's what it's trying to do, is kind of the counters that went for that deck. We're now trying to beat those counters with this deck. And of course, as well, into Amber Steel Aggro, it's very, very strong. Setting up the Ursula just to throw Zeus's out is amazing. Like, how do you beat a Rhino? If you just set up an Ursula and sing Zeus on it. If it's traditional Amber Steel Aggro, they won't have a Zeus in their deck. So unless they go 4 wide, which I think is theoretically impossible by turn 3, you can sing a Zeus on it and delete it off the board. And then they might not, because if they've done turn 1 Rhino, turn 2 Shift Rhino, by turn 3 they'd have to go on, quite wide, maybe a Lady and a Smee, to even snap back and kill your Ursula. Otherwise, she's going to be able to sing again, and you can just keep developing your board wider. And then at any point, if they haven't removed her, you could use her as that Rapunzel trap that I keep mentioning. So even into that deck, it's felt a lot better. So it's a reaction to the reaction decks for the Amber Steel Aggro, and also a reaction to Amber Steel Aggro. Because, yeah, I don't know about you, but if you play any Amber Steel Aggro mirrors, they're just very dull, and sometimes it's just who curves out better and who's on the play. So going in with tools that are better equipped for it, like Ursula and Zeus, is very strong. Of course, the changes are kind of minor differences compared to what we're seeing in the Vinny lists, but they're quite big, and I think you could just 4x that Zeus again if you want. I'm personally trying to try 3 Lawrences because sometimes I found the Rapunzel traps are a lot better. And as well, like, one of our major draw mechanics in the deck is just draw 2 cards. If you draw a Zeus and another 4-drop, we're quite heavy on the 4-drops as well now. We're looking at 13 4-drops. If you draw them, sometimes that can just lose you the game tempo wise. Next turn you're just gonna be playing 1 character a turn. So yeah, there's all those points as well. But yeah, it seems very strong and very well placed. Of course, its downsides is always the classic issue with the 2-cost Ursula is that it's just terrible to play into Sisu. So like red blue and red purple decks that are running it. You don't really want to establish her. She's not going to do anything, and they'll just ramp and Sisu out. And you play 4 of them, and like most of the time you are able to just ink them. And if you know it's a red blue matchup, you can just play your aggressive lines, of Daisy, Piglets and Smees and Ladies. You don't have to look at using Ursula at all. Hopefully you can ink it, but it's in the deck. It might end up getting to a point where it's the only card you can play on the board, and that's kind of rough for you. And she's also only a 1 quester, so does lose points there. Like Ruby Sapphire items is mainly its weakness. I think into the Ruby Sapphire Shark, sometimes it's not too bad. They're actually cutting down on the costs of and the counts of big Sisu down to like 2, because they're trying to fit big Hades in there, as the 7-cost Hades in there as well, for other matchups. So Yeah, I've kind of felt it has a weaker game into that. Into Ruby Amethyst, I think it's sort of fine. Sometimes it's even nice to have that bit of control, a bit more power in that sense, because if they're going to do something like on turn two play the Queen of Hearts, the 2 cost, that card sometimes can just beat aggro decks just from its power because you turn anything sideways. They can crab buff hit, and then they've got this huge character on board. You know, if you quest with a Daisy, they crab buff it and then run it into a Daisy, and now they've got a 4-3 and a 3-3 on board, and you just lose there. So being able to delete that with more singers is just another bonus there. So Ruby Amethyst, I haven't felt into that rough. I think it might lose points into. I haven't played it too much, but like yellow green aggro, not aggro. I think it'd be pretty good into Chernodogs, to be honest with you. It loses points into yellow green under the sea because again, you're kind of just winning that matchup now by the fact that you're insanely aggressive and you can just peat lock them. You can do that, but again, we've pulled back some of the aggression. There's no pennies in here. We're putting in bigger uninkable songs that they can just snatch from our hand. So it can be a bit more off there. But into green purple, I felt it gets more pointers. Into green steel, it's a bit more resilient as well. Just because you have more removal options, and sometimes you lose that match because they get a Diablo established or they get an Ursula established on 3. So in sense, like the matchups that it feels rough into are kind of a bit more fringe pick. So Ruby Sapphire items, I'm surprised it feels kind of bad into that deck, and I don't know how popular the deck's going to be. It keeps topping and it keeps doing really well at events, so I think it's going to keep its popularity up. It got first in Norway and it was second at the CCS, so it is still around and it is still a deck to really think about. I think forgetting about the deck is the wrong thing to do when you're deck building. And yeah, they're just able to play Bell, use the coil very efficiently, get free Scrooges, little Sisu, you know, Maui's, big Sisu, all those things just kind of wreck this deck. And if we're not playing quick enough, we're not going to have much point of playing, and putting in a big uninkable song in the deck and then putting singers for those songs is kind of rough. So that deck still can be a real pain for it. But besides that, it's felt fairly fair. I think as well, like some of the matchups, it just doesn't give you any extra pointers into. So into Blurple, it doesn't improve the Blurple matchup at all. It's still going to be as hard as it was if you're playing Amber Steel Aggro. And I mentioned RP. I don't think it improves it vastly. It just gives you some more play lines, more options. You know, if they're going to play a Peter Pan down, you have more ways to remove that Peter Pan, and that can be the make or break in the matchups if they're going to play Yargos or Genies. So yeah, it gives you some more different play lines in there, but besides that, all it really does is improve your, of course, Amber Steel Aggro matchup in general. And then it also improves you beating all of the decks that were built to counter it. So you've got the Amethyst Steels in there, the traditional Steel songs, and there's a lot of green purple that I would say is quite designed to beat Amber Steel Aggro with its bouncing and its ability to buff crabs and stuff like that. And it just anything that has the approach that it wants to beat Amber Steel Aggro, and then everything else, it just feels like it's still got very good game into them. Besides Ruby Sapphire items, and I'd say green, yellow under the sea is, you know, playing your 2 cost Ursula is never really that great. They're going to rip the songs out of your hand. That's entirely what they do. And if you draw a Zeus, it's like, oh, they're going to take that. You know, we have 7 uninkable songs now in this deck. But yeah, it just felt very strong. I think as well, I could do some mulligan guides on it, but the play lines for it are very unintuitive or intuitive. Sorry, they are very they make a lot of sense. Of course, if it's a matchup where they could be playing that Rhino early and you don't have the shift, or you think they might be able to let the Storm the shift, you can just play your Ursula on 2, sing Zeus, delete it, move on. Against like some of the Amethyst Steel decks, like if you're on the draw, and you know they're just going to win by a genie race, and controlling your board a bit, Ursula on 2, delete it, and then on top of that you've got all the other things. You can still shift your Rhino if you think you can get the shift off, but of course nowadays other people can be thinking let the Storm on it, or they can just be playing fire the cannons, which I've been seeing quite a lot of. And then yeah, just play your aggressive lines, use your Sven to restand things. You could sing twice or whatever, or just sing and restand your Ursula so she isn't removed off the board, restand your Piglet to protect it, set up Rapunzel traps like you do a traditional Steel song, and at any point you need to draw some more cards, you can always just play a dock. So yeah, I think it's a very strong approach to the meta and a very strong reaction to the meta. But I think again it's a deck that survives quite well because the meta is the way it is and the way the things have shaped out. I think there's a world where this would not be good, and this only is a product of what is happening with all the other decks and like the way things are planning out. But yeah, it's a very strong contender for me to play this weekend for Axion, a competitive big event in the UK.